Okay, this is me, and this is what I look like, or wish that I looked like, surrounded by all my little characters that I love to draw. I am currently in a really unique place right now in that I am a fully functioning independent artist. I make money on my own, and I run a business out of my house. It's a super, super privileged place to be. And it's one of those things that I feel unbelievably lucky every day that I get to do it. And it all really comes out of the fact that through my life, I've really followed what I like to call the spirit of adventure. I've said yes to a lot of opportunities and I've taken quite a few risks, I think, up to this point. And I have to say, I'm really glad that I did. I grew up in a super, super small town, Gig Harbor, Washington. It's probably similar in size to Sheboygan. It has one high school, and it's an old fishing town in the Puget Sound in Washington. I would say probably about an hour, hour and a half from Seattle, if you know where that is. I was definitely one of the sort of eccentric, weird kids of the kids that I knew. And the town that I lived in was obviously very sort of storybook level in the way that it looks. And so it was very much a lucky place, and it definitely informed everything that I do. And I obviously grew up very close to nature. When I graduated high school, I really wanted to go somewhere that was really safe for sort of creative people and artistic people. So I sought out the Evergreen State College, which is in Olympia, Washington. And it's a school that opened in the late 60s during sort of the Cultural Revolution in America. And it really promoted kids learning on their own. So maybe some of you know Linda Barry. She's a very, very famous cartoonist from Wisconsin who currently teaches in Madison. She also went to Evergreen, as did Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons. It was a very safe place for creative people to be as weird and as wacky and as fun as they wanted to be. So I did a running start program through high school, and I was able to graduate early, and I was able to come into Evergreen when I was 17 and ready to go. And it was an absolutely life-changing experience. After I graduated from Evergreen, I moved back to Tacoma, Washington. And Tacoma, Washington is probably most famous because it's the hometown of Dale Chihuly. He's probably the largest, most prominent glass artist in America. You've probably seen him. He looks like he has an eye patch and he has crazy, silly clown hair. But he is an absolute maestro at what he does, and he's completely self-made. And as a product of that, in Tacoma, there's a lot of opportunities for young people to learn how to blow glass. So everyone that I worked with at Tacoma Glassblowing Studio came out of a high school program in glassblowing. I was also able to take glassblowing lessons when I was in high school. So I was immediately thrown into the craft. Glassblowing is super ancient, and it hasn't really changed in, the past 1,000 to 10,000 years. The tools are very similar. It's only sort of gone into modernity with the large electrical equipment. But there I was able to make all sorts of things, and I worked in production. So every day we made 150 glass pumpkins or snowmen or ornaments every day. And we really worked as a close creative team. There were about 6 of us who worked there at one time. We were all younger men in our 20s. I think I'm maybe 19 in this picture. And it absolutely changed my life. And it really gave me a strong relationship to craft. And I was just really lucky that I was able to work there. So I worked there for several years. And then I got an opportunity to move to England. And it was just very much a sort of a spur of the moment opportunity. And I moved to England for a little less than a year. And there I worked for a carpenter. It was a great gig. I worked sort of as a carpenter's assistant, learning to build houses. And obviously in England, the houses are incredibly old. So I learned a lot about craft in that department. This is sort of more of me talking about the spirit of adventure, sort of choosing things just because I thought it would be a fun adventure and it would be something that would change me and help me grow. So then when I moved back to America, I worked at the glassblowing shop for a short time. And then my partner and I sort of agreed that we should move somewhere that would really promote both of our jobs as well as just being creative. So I've always played music my entire life, and I'm very, very interested in sort of older American music. So we moved to Austin, and I worked at a furniture shop building wooden furniture, and I worked at a glass blowing shop for a little while. And with my extra time, I joined a full-time gigging hillbilly string band, a fiddle and banjo band. We played several times a week at a local sort of venue coffee shop, and it was really, really, really fun. It was another opportunity to be part of a really nice creative team where we all worked together making things. I moved back I moved up to Wisconsin because I had already reached my degree, and I'd been working sort of in these craft fields, making stuff for an hourly wage, and I really wanted time to explore my own work. So right before I moved to Wisconsin, I was sort of looking for opportunities to give me some time to just make something fun and not have to really worry about pressure, and just make for the sake of making and for the joy of making something. So I got an opportunity to have an artist in residence opportunity at Howard Finster's Paradise Garden, which is a self-taught artist environment in Georgia. It's in really far north Georgia, and it was the famous home of Howard Finster, who was a long-standing self-taught artist who started working, in the 40s and 50s, but really hit his peak in the 80s and 90s when he started doing album artwork for bands. Howard died in 2001, and I was able to sort of go to his property and use his tools and materials to make a sculpture that would be a permanent installation. So I always loved sort of homemade, self-taught toys and projects. So I wanted to make a giant wind toy. This is 18 feet tall. It's made from all recycled materials. And obviously all those little things are propellers. So all the propellers blow in the wind, and it's a completely kinetic moving sculpture that's still there. It's totally permanent. So all these opportunities led for me to have a killer portfolio to apply to go to graduate school. This will be something that I really want to talk about more with you guys after the fact, but it was really important for me to find a way that I could go to graduate school without going into debt. So I looked for a program that would offer me a scholarship or make sure that I was fully funded. So I was really lucky enough to receive a fellowship to the University of Wisconsin in Madison. Maybe some of you have been there, in their furniture woodworking department. So I got there. I immediately felt like I was in heaven. I was essentially getting paid to make things and make whatever I wanted, which obviously I'd been working in the trades up to that point, so I wasn't able to do anything that I wanted, and now I was free to make. So I'm kind of going to work from large stuff that I've made all the way down to smaller stuff that I've made. This was really the first big thing I made when I moved to Wisconsin. It's a fortune-telling booth on wheels. And I would sit in there, and kind of through my experience in performance and making music, I had kind of developed a fun persona, and I loved sort of early Americana whimsical things. So I would sit in here, and people would come up and I would tell their fortunes, and they were all joke fortunes. It was really just an attempt to do something fun that was a silly joke. And it became super popular. I did it at a very large community event in Madison, and that really helped me get in the door in sort of the arts community in Madison. And it was just a really super fun project. And it was totally out of, like I keep talking about, the spirit of adventure. I just wanted to do something that was challenging and silly and completely playful, just art for art's sake. For my master's show in Madison, both my parents are antique dealers. So I grew up in sort of small town antique malls and really small shops that sold old things. I'd been thinking a lot about art that I wanted to be accessible to all people. And I'd been thinking a lot about art that I could sell for an inexpensive price, so that anyone I knew could have it and own it. I wanted people to be able to own a piece of me in whatever capacity. So what I did was I rented a booth at an antique mall. It was $80 a month, and I would sell antiques out of there as well as my own artwork. So I made a bunch of artwork about history, a bunch of drawings. I built all of these frames with my woodworking experience, and I made sort of a silly installation at this antique mall. And it became very funny because people would come in to buy who didn't know that it was sort of an art project. And they ended up buying these drawings thinking that they were made by some self-taught artist or some sort of artist that little did they know was a student at the university. So it was a really, really, really fun project. It went on for months and months and months. And I ended up selling quite a few of the drawings with folks not really knowing that they were made by me. Recently, I have really fallen into doing a lot of drawing and illustration work. I really love drawing, and I always have drawn. And it was one of those things that anytime I was traveling or working sort of in a really small space or out of a small apartment or a small studio, it was something I knew I could always do, and it wouldn't cost a lot to make. So a few years ago, I did an installation at the Graduate Hotel in Madison, and they sort of got wind of the project that I was working on there, and they started hiring me to do sort of larger scale projects for them. So this is a giant mural that I just finished painting in, it was in mid-April in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I did an illustration sketch for them and they really liked it. So they sent me in, put me in a hotel, and I painted this huge, it's a giant room, it's 4 walls, and each of the walls is 22 feet tall. So it was a huge project. It took me a week. I had a helper, luckily, and it turned out to be a really fun project, and it was really large. So now that's sitting in that hotel now. And I totally love it. And it totally fits in with sort of me just being able to make something silly for the sake of it. There it is again, sort of in progress. Here's another piece that I did for a Graduate Hotel. This one's in Columbus, Ohio. They first hired me to do the images on the ceiling. And then later on, they said, you know, oh, we really love your silly drawings, and we thought that it would be really fun to do something sort of sports themed or Ohio themed. So they paid me to do these sort of larger wall pieces. These are all 4 feet by 3 feet, and they were just super fun to make. They have images of Billie Jean King and Jesse Owens, sort of famous people that were alumni of the university in Columbus. And Macho Man Randy Savage. I grew up watching wrestling as a kid, and he was one of my favorites. Here's another ceiling I did, or the rest of that ceiling in the Graduate Hotel in Columbus, Ohio. They wanted to include sort of fun advertisements around the town of Columbus and particular restaurants in Columbus. So I got to sort of do my own fun and silly takes on famous landmarks in the Columbus, Ohio area. Then, while I was in grad school, I became very, very, very obsessed with what is called tramp art. I've always worked out of really small spaces, and I've always worked with very limited amount of money. So I was really interested in things that I could make that wouldn't cost a lot, didn't have a ton of overhead, and could be built in very small sort of environments. So tramp art comes from I think people sort of think it's associated with hobo craft, but it was really sort of a large movement that happened beginning in Europe and then came to America in the 1920s and 30s. Every major town, if it could have a cigar factory, it also had a cigar box factory. And when people were done with their cigars, they would always have these empty boxes, and they were usually made out of really nice wood like mahogany or cedar. So it became popular to mill down this wood and take each layer of the cigar box and chip carve around the outside. And all of this is done with just a single whittling knife. And you go around and you make little chips around the box piece, and then you build another piece on top of it, carve around it, and so on. So this was the very first tramp art box I made. This was maybe from 2-3 years ago now, almost. It was really sort of a very basic build, but it was really fun to make. It has 2 drawers. I used sort of my furniture making experience from when I lived in England to make the box. And then I was able to just build this in my little tiny apartment with just some tacks and some glue and the whittling knife. This is another one I made. You might recognize the little folksy Popeye character. This one was, I built around a cigar box that was very popular in sort of the tramp art style to build around a cigar box. So this one's about maybe 10 inches wide and maybe 12 inches tall after it's all been built up. And it was just really fun to make, and it became a very meditative process for me to just play and sit back and carve away as I went and make something that was just fun, but also looked very time intensive, but didn't cost a lot of money. Here's another one I made. This one just recently sold, which I'm very grateful for. But it's another large box, and then I carved the fist. The fist is human hand sized, so that gives you sort of an idea of the scale. And it's all carved out of basswood. And basswood is a really great domestic American wood that's super inexpensive and really easy to carve. It's very soft, and the grain is very short and sort of sporadic. So it's definitely the wood that a lot of carvers use. And I really like it because it's a really sustainable wood as well. It's not a rare wood, it's not hard to grow, and it's really easy to harvest because you can harvest it very quickly within a couple of years after it's started growing. This is another tramp art box that I just finished. It was a commission for a client, and he collects Viewmaster slides. You guys might be too young to know what a Viewmaster slide is, but it's a machine. It used to be a toy that you would stick some slides in, and you would look up at the sun, and you'd be able to see various places like Hawaii or a circus or any sort of transportative world. It was pre-phone, so if you needed to escape somewhere, you would use a Viewmaster. So this is a large cabinet, maybe the size of a medicine cabinet, and everything on it is hand carved with a whittling knife or with a chisel. And it's definitely one of my favorite pieces I've made up to this point. It was really fun to make, and it was nice to make something that was just silly, but really time intensive. This probably took me, 3 weeks straight of carving. This piece I made a couple of years ago. It's probably the largest thing I've ever made. I'm a big collector of zines or homemade books and made by my friends or other artists I love. And so I wanted a space and an object that people could come and look at my collection without me having to share it out. I love libraries, and I feel like they're a very democratic place. And so I wanted something that people could look at my collection and be able to return it if they wanted to. And there's probably 200 zines in there currently. And that is actually available for viewing at the Color Art Library in Madison. Here it is again. It's easily 4 feet wide and 3 feet tall. It's massive. It took a crazy amount of time to make. But I was really lucky. I was in graduate school, and I had the time to make it and the space to make it. And it really was a great success. And I really love this piece a lot. And I was hoping that I'd be able to come up to Madison to get it this year. But with the pandemic being such, I will probably get it soon enough. I love doing silly stuff. And especially during the pandemic, I haven't had a ton of opportunities to interact with people. So I've been making really fun, silly videos out of really simple things. So I made this pumpkin head that I carved, and I ran around my neighborhood with it. And people loved it. I love to perform, and I love to make anything sort of musical. This was another musical performance I did at the Willie Street Co-op in Madison. I made this little wooden puppet here, and I played the fiddle. This was another really simple thing that I could make at home. And I lived across the street from this grocery store, and I was able to just play music with a little dancing friend. And I think the community really liked it and really enjoyed having me there. I hope. This baby definitely did. So now I'm going to move towards more talking about drawing. I have always tried to make sure that I'm able to support myself with my creative projects. So it became very apparent to me that if I moved and I didn't have a woodworking shop or a space to make things out of wood, drawing was the easiest thing. I could put the project in my backpack. I could carry it with me wherever I needed to. I could work on it on a train or on the bus. And that really resonated with me because then I was also able to sell this stuff for very cheap. I'm going to zoom through the rest of these real quick and just say I run my own business now. It's an illustration business, and I do it from my home, and I make all sorts of things for companies, musicians, T-shirts I make. This one I did for the art center. This one I did for my hometown that I was really proud of. I did this as a fundraiser for the fires in California. I do things for all sorts of little shops. And then I just did this one for a snail farm in California. And that is it. Okay, I'm back.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Taylor. So we'll open it up now to a conversation. It is 10:56, so I just want to be conscious of time that we're going to end at 11:10, so that gives us a little less than 15 minutes to talk. So I'll just ask for you guys to volunteer yourselves to either ask the question that you prepared or a new question that came to mind while you were hearing Taylor speak.
Go for it.
How old were you when you really decided and chose that you wanted to do art as a living?
Well, I grew up in a creative family, but none of my parents, both my parents grew up on farms, so they didn't really know that you could make money as an artist. So it took me into my later teenage years to realize that it was actually possible in the modern world to do that. So probably in my later teens, when I saw other people being creative and making money doing it, then I thought maybe this is possible. And once I started selling art after that, it just made sense to keep going because I loved being able to make money doing what I really loved. Yeah, Reese?
Well, while you were in London, England, what are some things that you learned that you have brought with you throughout your years as an artist?
My absolute favorite thing that I learned in England is a phrase that they use when they talk about building. And the phrase is belts and braces, which means you need a belt and suspenders to hold your pants up. And that's how they build stuff. They build stuff extra well so that it lasts forever. And that's why they have so many old buildings in England, is because they were built so well. And when I make stuff now, I think about belts and braces all the time as sort of, you need to build it so that it lasts forever, if you can. Does that answer your question? Who else? Yeah.
How long did it take from when you started your business to when you were fully able to provide for yourself with just that business?
Well, it's interesting. I think most people that you'll talk to who are artists have always sort of had, I call it a side hustle or like a separate job that kind of kept them going. And I actually, just at the beginning of the pandemic, left my separate job. So I'd always kind of been running my business that way, but it really took my time away from me when I was working at a separate job. I was actually repairing violins at a violin shop. And once the pandemic hit, I realized I don't want to go back there if I don't have to keep myself safe. And I thought, okay, now is my chance if I'm going to have a chance. So I took it, and I'm really, really glad I did because I'm safe, I'm happy, and I'm totally making money.
So for me, art is more of a hobby and I'm not like looking to pursue it. But one thing that I've had issues with is I'm not very good at like coming up with my original ideas. I usually have to like look stuff up and I pretty much base it off of there and switch it up a little bit. So I was wondering, like, how do you come up with your own original like ideas?
I think it's really, really important to activate that part in your brain where you see stuff and you log it in the archive. So I really, really love going outside, and I really love going on adventures. And I find that those things really help me get ideas for projects, is when I'm able to rest and I'm able to just think about the things around me and look really closely at the things around me. But I think at your stage, you shouldn't be afraid to sort of mimic the art that you really like, because you'll find that that'll help you build your technique and be able to draw or make or do whatever a little bit better. And you'll find that once you have those tools and you feel really good about your ability to make something, then it'll be easier for you to generate, ideas. So don't be hung up if you're sort of doing a lot of mimicking now, because you got lots of time.
Taylor, do you have a question for the teens here?
Yeah, I want to know who is thinking that they might want to be an artist. Awesome. Oh yes, I love it. You're gonna find, especially, I think I can relate to you very well because I also grew up in a really small town. I'm sorry, this is my dog Willie. He loves talking on the computer. I think you'll find that it'll be hard at first to get people to understand sort of what you're up to or what you're trying to accomplish. And I think that if you keep does everyone know what overhead is? It's like, that's the amount of money you have to pay right off the bat, like rent or something like that. If you keep your overhead really low and you give yourself time to make stuff, you'll find that you'll find a community that really responds to it, no matter who it is. Because we live in a country, and especially with the internet, we have so many little cultures and subcultures that you're always going to find somebody to respond to what you're making, even if you think that you're the total biggest weirdo on the planet.
I think that's such a good point too, Taylor. One thing that I really appreciate about your presentation is you really emphasized finding those communities and how big of an impact they made on you, even if it was an experience that didn't feel quite like what you wanted to be doing, like really embracing things like glass blowing and furniture building and just seeing where it takes you. Because then eventually you found that awesome residency at Howard Finster's and you made your way to Wisconsin. So I think it's really just trusting that as you find one community, it doesn't have to be your forever community either. And that's something that, as someone, I kind of have that dual role of like working in a museum, but I also consider myself an artist, finding those different supportive communities that make you feel really good. So I really appreciate all of those questions that are coming out.
It's so important to find people that respond to your stuff. Not only because it makes you feel really good, but it makes you also feel like what you're doing is right, and there's other people doing it just like you. And I think that's what you need. Is I've always sort of modeled myself after mentors or people that I saw doing what I wanted to do, and it was really easy to sort of follow in their path and see that you can do your own thing and not be afraid to do it. I mean, I think now more than ever with the internet, you guys are just so capable to do whatever you want to do if you work crazy hard.
Are there any other questions for Taylor before we end the conversation today, Cordelia?
Have you ever, do you have any advice for people who have low self-esteem with their art? Like, if they think the art is bad, or if they just have general anxiety with their art, do you have any kind of feedback or advice for them?
Absolutely, because I also very much struggle with this sort of feeling of self-doubt, or this feeling that what I'm doing is not worth it. And I think that you have to develop sort of an internal trust with yourself. Because the thing is humans are born to create stuff. Humans are natural creators. And so I consider every person an artist in some capacity, even if they don't identify as that. And I think that you will slowly but surely sort of develop a trust in yourself. At your age, it's really hard. I felt the exact same way when I was your age. But I think that you have to learn. It's tough, but you have to push through. And you have to just don't be afraid to show your stuff and be proud of your stuff to anyone, to any eyes. Because it starts with your grandma or your grandpa or your uncle or somebody who in your family who says, oh, you're really, really great at this. And eventually your friends see it. And then eventually you find someone in the world that sees it, that really responds to it and wants to maybe pay you for it. and you'll get there. It's hard, but you will get there.
Do you think having the support of your partner like helped you get to where you are now as an artist and creator?
Yeah, definitely. I am very, very lucky as well that my partner is not, she doesn't identify as an artist. She's an amazing adult coloring book artist, however. But I'm very, very lucky in that I have someone who allows me to be me. And I think that whether that's, a partner that you live with, or if that's someone in your family or a friend, I think having someone that really accepts you for you is what's going to make you grow your best as an artist. And I think that that's a big lesson in just, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't myself when I met this person. So you have to just be yourself and be totally honest with yourself. And you'll find someone who's just totally digs it, no matter who it is. And I think having that is totally, totally valuable. And I'm very, very lucky that I have that.
Well, I want to be conscious of time, and I so appreciate everyone giving a part of their Monday morning. I do want to remind you again that the Art Center is totally free. We are open Wednesday through Sunday. Just check out our website. The Adolf van der Thai exhibition, which is very much connected to Taylor's work, is open until mid-January. And I think it's a great example of someone who really found a community that he was super interested in, because Adolf van der Thai was not a part of hobo and tramp culture, but he really wanted to learn. And he found something, kind of like you were saying, Hannah, he found something that really interested him. And in a way, because of Adolf van der Thai, we know so much more about that craft, because he kind of created his own museum in his house. So if you want to be really inspired by someone from Wisconsin who just made because he loved making and learned because he loved learning, definitely go visit the Art Center. Or go online. There is a 360 virtual tour of it as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Taylor. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody. Thanks so much.
Bye, guys. Thank you very much.